Is underway in New York following the brutality witnessed in Gaza on Monday. Of course, we're taking you live to the United Nations.
News Agency.
Lingua.
Indonesian.
We missed two here.
Fox News.
Yeah.
With the Radio Radicale in Rome and La Voce di New York,
Italian media. Deutsche Welle. I know Deutsche Welle, yeah.
Japanese.
We are expecting to hear from the Palestinian Liberation Organization, and this is a press conference at the United Nations. Earlier, we saw Erdogan from Turkey, the president there, discussing what happened in Israel this week.
Okay, I'm on. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. It's very kind of you to be here today. This is a day that is not a very happy one for us, as you know. It comes against the backdrop of several events that are marked by either tragedy on the one hand or a total political bias and destructive moves on the other. In Gaza, the massacre of 61 civilians is an ongoing tragedy. It comes in the aftermath, of course, of several issues. One is the movement of the American embassy to Jerusalem and the Trump administration's decision to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel in violation of international law and the requirements of peace, and a blatant show of bias, and in a way that would lead to the destruction of the chances of peace, the elimination of the U.S. as an even-handed peace broker, and its inability to play any role in that pursuit of peace. And at the same time, they becoming complicit with Israel in the occupation itself, in land theft, in illegal annexation of territory, which, according to the, as you know, the Rome Statute, is a war crime. And in case somebody didn't tell the American administration, they should be very careful what they condone and what they are party to when it comes to annexing occupied territory and violating Security Council resolutions. This is one. The murder of civilians is not the responsibility of leadership or any political party. The Palestinian people were protesting. It was a grassroots movement, and it continues. They were demanding the right to return. The right of return is enshrined in international law for all refugees. They were also demanding the lifting of this debilitating and cruel siege of Gaza to be able to lead a minimal, normal life, even under occupation. And they were protesting, as I said, the American moves on Jerusalem. So, in a sense, it's very disingenuous and misleading to find in Hamas a convenient scapegoat and to blame the death of civilians and the death of innocents at the hands of the Israeli military on Hamas. These were the people who were acting on their own, who were protesting on their own land. And therefore, it is, the last I heard, the people who were shooting, the people who were using sniper fire, the people who were using drones, tank shells, are the Israeli army. And therefore, the Israeli army has to be held responsible squarely, and not to try to find excuses for these horrific murders, and to try to blame the victim as usual. And at least the representative should have had the decency to stay or to stand up or to acknowledge the victims and not to walk out. And again, not to blame the victims. This has to stop. That is why we are seeking real solutions. We are not attempting to find any kind of pacification or any kind of economic peace or any kind of taking steps that would make peace that much more difficult. And I don't see by any logic how taking Jerusalem off the table would be a stepping stone to peace. It would be a total annihilation of peace. This is one. And attacking the refugees and attacking UNRWA and withholding funding is also another way of destroying another building block of peace, because the refugee question is crucial, especially in the 70 years since the Nakba. If you don't solve the root causes of the Nakba, you will not have a solution. So that is another issue. And of course, we did not choose the 67 boundaries. It was a global decision that there should be 2 states on 67. To us, it was a painful compromise. We recognized Israel, we accepted the 2-state solution, and now Israel is busy expanding. And when people talk about Israeli borders, I would like to ask Israel what its borders are. Israel is the only country that has no borders but expands at will on other people's lands. And its expansion is on Palestinian land. It is not on Israeli land. And it expands as it goes along. And this has to stop again. So the question of Israeli sovereignty over its own land is very much in question, because the West Bank is occupied, Jerusalem is occupied, Gaza is occupied, and these are all Palestinian territories that must be restored to Palestine if there is to be peace. I would like to thank all the countries who have expressed solidarity, countries that have recalled their ambassadors, beginning with Turkey and others, and some European countries, Ireland, Belgium. There are countries that are not easily intimidated by the U.S. or by the threats of the U.S. representative to take down names. And I believe that the international community can be counted on so far still to do what is right. That's why we have asked for international protection and looking into the various means available in accordance with the UN regulations and precedents available. We have asked for an independent commission of inquiry to come to Gaza and to actually issue a decisive and objective report as to what's been happening, because Gaza has been the target of unbridled Israeli violence for so long. And this again has to stop. We are also referring a case to the International Criminal Court on the settlements issue in accordance with the Rome Statute, as I said. And we have signed our accession to several charters and conventions and organizations. This is not a punitive measure. This is our right. It is our right to be a member of the international community, and it is our right to seek intervention and protection by the international community and to ask this community to respect its own legislation and its own charter and regulations. So it is indeed a very sad day, but at the same time, it is time that the Palestinian issue is dealt with on the basis of international law, international humanitarian law, and international human rights law. I will be glad to take your questions and move from there. Thank you.
Dr. Ashrawi, welcome to the United Nations. On behalf of the UN Correspondents Association, we thank you for this press opportunity. My name is Sherwin Bryce-Pease, correspondent for South African Broadcasting. A couple of questions for you, and just a correction. The first country to withdraw its ambassador was not Turkey, it was South Africa. Yes. So I wonder, does the PLO find such actions useful? In addition to that, Ambassador Haley of the United States in the Council yesterday talked about those who suggest that the Gaza violence has anything to do with the location of the American embassy in Jerusalem, are sorely mistaken. Rather, the violence comes from those who reject the existence of the State of Israel. Can you address that specific point? And also, as a final question, is the two-state solution dead?
Oh, these are serious questions. Yes, I think the PLO certainly finds the withdrawal, the recalling of ambassadors a very important step, because first of all it signals to the Palestinians that they're not alone. It signals to the international community that there are laws and rules and regulations that govern the behavior of civilized nations that have to be respected, and it sends a message to Israel that it should be bound by these rules and regulations that dominate civilized behavior if you want to be a state among other states within this global collective. It's extremely important, and we call on all the Arab countries to do that, all the Organization of Islamic Conference to do that, and any country that understands the importance of taking a stand when there are violations like this, because it means that you respect the global rule of law and that there is accountability for Israel. The main problem is Israeli impunity and lack of accountability for Israel. I mean, don't get me going on Ambassador Haley. Really, I think it's extremely difficult to find any relationship between reality and the words we hear coming out from the American representative here. If the supreme provocation of extracting Jerusalem from the heart of Palestine, from the core of any peace initiative, if that is not provocation, if that is not the cause for protests, when the Palestinians see the end of any chances of peace, when they see the blatant bias and lawlessness of the annexation of the city of Jerusalem, which is a Palestinian city, to Israel, and then saying that these protests, does she know the Palestinians more than we know ourselves? That these have nothing to do with the American moves? When on December 6th, President Trump decided or announced that he's going to move, that he's going to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, till now, 155 Palestinians were killed protesting peacefully such a decision. More than 12,000 were injured, and many of them are going to suffer disabilities as a result by the Israeli army, protesting the American decision. This is the human toll so far, let alone political and legal toll, of this irresponsible, reckless, biased, dangerous American decision. And to claim that these protests have nothing to do with the American decision means that there is a total disconnect with reality. This is extremely dangerous. And what did you...
The State of Israel, the recognition of the State of Israel, she was saying that's what it's about.
Oh. Well,
State of Israel.
It seems again that this is a disconnect with reality. In 1988, we recognized the State of Israel, our PNC, which is the Palestine National Council. And we entered negotiations on that basis. In 1993, there was an exchange of letters in which President Yasser Arafat recognized the State of Israel to live in peace and security, the right of Israel to live in peace and security. So that should be enough for anybody who is a member of this international community. You cannot attribute motives. You cannot decide on your own what the reasons are for these protests. Hamas, as an organization, and certainly the Palestinian people, as I said, are not a push-button people. They don't get instructions from above to do to protest. These are, as I said, grassroots, spontaneous moves, and they are mainly run by civil society, by independent people, by people who are driven to protest, to reject such an unfair and unjust reality. and to try constantly to find Hamas as a convenient scapegoat and to blame Hamas for everything, because they have labeled Hamas as a terrorist organization. Therefore, all Palestinians are terrorists and all Palestinians act at the behest of Hamas and so on. This is not only entirely untrue, but it is misleading, and it is a way of avoiding dealing with the truth. And this total disregard for human rights, for human suffering, this total acquiescence to a continued bloodbath in Palestine, and to continued impunity for Israel, and to continued lawlessness and criminality, this cover for Israel, has led the Palestinians to think that Israel has two representatives in the UN, not just one, and one of them even more adamant than the other. So this is extremely dangerous language. Now, the two-state solution, Israel is bent on superimposing Greater Israel on historical Palestine. We accepted the partition of Palestine. It was a painful concession that we made. We accepted Israel on 78% of our land, of historical Palestine. Now Israel wants to take over all of historical Palestine. And that is how the two-state solution is being destroyed. While everybody is talking about direct bilateral negotiations between occupier and occupied, Israel is acting unilaterally to annex more land, to steal more resources, to demolish more homes, to carry out ethnic cleansing, to annex Jerusalem and transform the capital.
Those, of course, live visuals from the UN. Dr. Hanan Ashrawi, who is a member of the Palestinian Legislative Executive Council, reflecting on the events of the last few days, and particularly the stance taken by the United States. Ambassador Nikki Haley there making what she is calling provocative statements, and she's saying there's a disconnect between the words of the American ambassador to the United Nations and reality. Strong words, and recognizing the solidarity displayed by, in particular, South Africa and all those nations that have recalled their ambassadors from Israel, saying it does send the right message, and that every little bit of action and every bit of support goes a long way in showing solidarity with the Palestinian cause.
Yeah, saying that it does signal something to Israel, and it shows that some countries are not afraid of being bullied by the United States. Very strong words saying that they're trying again to blame the victims as usual, and saying that since this decision was taken to move the embassy to Jerusalem, 155 Palestinians have died, 12,000 injured, saying, and that is the toll, and that those protesters were protesting against the move of that embassy. We take a short break. We'll be back. We'll talk about Jay Gupta in India after the break, and we'll have the Hawks for you.